Okay, taking a little break aside to skim through the combat rules once more and understand them looking at the charts, because these charts kind of confused me when I first looked at them. Still haven't figured out this one yet. I just looked at a couple of pages. We'll keep going. Alright. I think these are just something you roll on. You add the fertility of the region, and that's the crap that you'll get. But I don't know what, like, ers are. Right? Is that just extra money that you find? I think so. Maybe it's ores. It's kind of hard to... I think that's supposed to be an ore. Oh. Unfortunately, there's a lot of language on these charts, but it is understandable. Maybe because I know a little bit of French, not much, and I certainly can't pronounce it. All right. So, movement comes down to two different types of play. Most units in the game, if you're playing just the area game, have one movement point. A few things like Pegasuses have two. The boats have two. When you pick up with a boat, you can carry up to 4 units. The units aren't going to be able to move, but they can sail with the boat for free, essentially. Okay, for normal, yeah. The Pegasus and the Valkyrie are considered flying, so they can actually travel over sea areas. Now that is the basic game, and heroes can ride the Pegasus and Valkyries. When you get to the advanced game, you start looking at, I think it's 6 or 9 movement points for most units, or is it 4? No, 4 or 6. 4 for the 1 hex, for the 1 area guys, 6 for the 2 area guys. And you'll be moving through hexes where everything costs us 1 except for mountains. Those big clumps, which count as 2, except some people have to pay an extra 1 for certain terrains, as listed on here. That's that terrain hostile or whatever. All right. And sea movement, the Drakers get 7 movement points. What it doesn't specify is where ports are. Now, it's great if there's a capital city there. You can just assume the port's in the capital city. But if it's not in the capital city on a hex basis, I guess the port will be where the port marker is. There's a few spaces on the board. For example, here, this area doesn't have the capital city on a water area. Obviously, here it's not a big deal because there is no water area, and you wouldn't build a port there. But a number of these, this one, for example, the port's not going to be here. I'd like to allocate it to a specific hex for that purpose. All right. What's also missing, and again, I haven't made my decision yet, seems to be any rules for destroying. So like if the port is in a hex, you can't destroy it particularly by being in that hex. You can't attack the opponent's resources. So it really does feel like an area game that they put this overlay of hexes to add a little bit of something, and I'm not sure it does any good for it. My temptation is to play the hex game, but alright, let's go back to combat. So the first combat they describe is combat against an independent area. You compute your combat strength, which is just going to be the value of the units in your area. And then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be rolling a die across the top of this chart, adding any hero bonus. Anything else you add there? Because 18 is pretty big. Okay, I guess that's not going to get very high, but maybe from events or special powers it can. And you compare that to your strength, and that becomes an addition to the strength of your unit. So if I had, say, a 20 strength unit, well, I could swing anywhere from a -3 to my total strength, all the way up to a +27. So that's a fairly random amount. Now, at the same time, you calculate what the defender has. Now, in the case of a neutral territory, the defender is just the village people, and you're going to compare what? The defender's morality or alignment versus your own, and you get a strength point total. That strength point total is affected then, maybe by this, it's affected by the type of unit that is present in the area. If it's a minor unit, it's only multiplied by 2. If it's an ordinary unit, it's multiplied by 3. If it's an exceptional unit, it'll be multiplied by 4. Whether or not prosperity comes into play, well, prosperity doesn't exist for neutral areas. That's not an issue. This is for determining against another player. I'll touch that in a minute. Your goal is going to be to roll higher than or equal to the, to get your total battle strength higher than or equal to the defending battle strength. If you fail at doing that, you lose everything. If you succeed, you're going to take combat strength losses equal to the difference between your initial battle strength. Before, I guess, you roll the die, I'm not sure. That's not really defined here. And the village folks' defense. Which will be a presumably smaller number. Whether or not that's an absolute value isn't clear. It seems like if a small force attacks, it should take damage, but... And clearly the bigger your initial battle strength, the more likely you're going to take big losses. So I don't know quite what the value of this, the attacker's damage is going to be. But anyway, you have to take at least that much. However, your weakest unit will survive no matter what. And if you succeed, you get your control marker, you get the card, your prosperity starts at 18, and then you roll on this chart, indeed, to see what you get in the region. Now, if you're attacking another player, things are a little different, but it's close. The defender is going to get the same kind of village folk bonus, but the die roll modifier is +5 from fortified walls. What die roll? There is no die roll for the defender. I'm going to say that has to be a -5. The defender doesn't roll a die, from what I understand. What? Yeah, it doesn't look like the defender gets to roll a die, only the attacker does here. So I'm going to have to say there's got to be a -5 to that die roll. For the walls. The defender also adds... Oh, wait, no, the defender gets a die roll maybe for his troops, because he has actual troops on the board. Again, this is not clear in the rules here. Okay, maybe we have an example, not of this kind of combat. Okay, Well, let's keep going. So the village folk are going to be calculated for the defender, and they're calculated on a more complex table, which is based on the alignment of the region, the alignment of the defender, and the alignment of the attacker. And that can modify the base strength point of the area. Now there's here a 2, 3, or 4 villagers, I don't know, times the modifier, which is going to be the alignment and prosperity. Let's see. So the sum of those two modifiers gives the village folk's combat value. This can be negative if the village folk hate their lords. And then it's multiplied by the type of local unit. And you add 1 to this multiplier if the area has fortified walls. So I think the defender gets to roll for his combat units just like the attacker does. But his village folk are going to be calculated for this. But here's the difference. The independent region has more troop strength than this does. But what is this 2, 3, or 4 here? Oh boy. I think that's, I don't know, that's completely not sensible to me. Folks multiplier, 2, 3, or 4. That's the multiplier based on the type. So 2 for minor, 3 for ordinary, 4 for exceptional. Gotcha. And again, that could be a negative if the area is hard for the defender to control. All right. An exceptional unit. That's the Pegasus, Giant, Ogre, and the Dragon. We haven't touched the Dragon yet. He's pretty easy, but we've ignored him in the sequence of play, I think. So Pegasus, Giant, and Ogre, Loki, the Dragon, and Undead induce fear. For each separate type of fear-inducing unit, the enemy has a -2 to their combat die roll. The Lords also have special powers which they can fire off during combat, perhaps. If the attacker's combat strength is lower than or equal to the defender, the attack fails and the entire attacking force is destroyed. The defender computes losses as above from the difference. The force of the defender minus the force of the attacker, with at least one surviving defending unit. If the attacker... Now, what's weird with that? Well, I can attack you with a very small force and do a lot of damage to you. Which is disturbing, to tell you the truth. I do not like this. Let's make sure that that's what it makes sense as. The player removes... His ending combat strength must be lower than or equal to... Oh! Okay. So... At the end of the battle, his strength has to be... He has to take damage equal to the defense, essentially. His strength has to be lowered by that amount, and that makes more sense, and that'll work here. It's just very, very weirdly worded. Okay, and likewise, the attacker if he takes losses in an attack against an opponent, it'll be the same kind of thing, where he's basically lowering his overall strength down to the level that the difference would be, more or less, which is essentially taking as many losses, I believe, as the defender has. All right, so that's the initial strength, is before they take losses, and post-battle strength is the other type, whatever that is. Final strength or something. Okay. If the attacker wins against an opponent, prosperity is lowered by 4. If there were ogres on his side and they survive, he loses 2 prosperity per ogre. Castles and fortified walls may be destroyed, 50-50 chance. The vanquished player has to give gold. That's going to be the wealth of the conquered area after the prosperity is lowered. If the player doesn't have enough gold, he gives everything he has. If the conquered area was his last area, he gives everything and he's lost the game. All right. So, looking at the advanced rules. Sea movement, 7 spaces. It costs a movement point to load and unload. Yeah. Loading units is 1 movement point per unit. And moving a hex costs movement, but unloading does not. Units have 2 movement factors on the counters. For example, this here will say 1, 4. 4 is the advanced game movement point allowance. The combat strength is the upper number. 1 would be the 1 hex movement that you're allowed. Alright. When a unit enters a hex with an enemy unit, it can no longer move, and then combat will be resolved when all moves are executed. Only units and heroes in that hex take part in the combat. Village folk and fortified walls are only used if the combat's in a capital city. To gain control of an area, you must fight and win in the city hex. Anything else is just going to be basic combat resolution without those extra factors. The Drakkars will be destroyed. And I think I will play with the advanced games. Then you go to a maintenance phase where you have to pay maintenance for the units, and that's going to be dedicated from here with the cost dependent on whether you have a camp or not. Now, if you have a camp, you only get the bonus if you're storing the units in your capital city with the camp. You can't get it from being external to the area if you're playing the advanced game. Now, let me jump back because I think I missed some things in the rolls, or in the sequence of play. So, after random events is this Summon Dragons segment. This is going to be not played on the first turn. Each player secretly bids an amount of gold. You must bid at least 10 gold or pass. Whoever bids the most gets the dragon and pays the gold. If you don't win the bid, you don't pay. The dragon is going to be placed on the map in any region or island the player controls. And if the dragon fights, he fights for the person who plays with him, or who paid for him. His combat value will be 15 plus a die 10. And it's only revealed during the combat phase. No modifier applies to it. It induces fear, and it will never die. Even if it's destroyed, it comes back in another turn. I think that's the only thing we missed in the sequence of play. Alright, now we flip through. We get some scenario information, we get some player advice here. Specifics on the different units. This is sort of a lookup type thing. So for example here, humans increasing prosperity by 1. Goblins, they have a strength of 4 when the friendly units is greater than the enemy units, but otherwise they have a strength of 3. A bunch of little modifiers like this that I think will kind of let come out during play, although they do definitely affect what you think, what you're deciding to do. You don't have a lot of choice here because each area only produces one kind of unit. It's not like Barbarian Kings where you can build, cav or infantry or boats. Here you build the thing you build. You can, of course, choose not to build certain types of troops because your resources are limited once you have a larger area under your control. Big list of events. Hopefully this covers the special heroes. It looks like it does. And all kind of cool stuff. But now we come to kind of the interesting, well, first of all, Lord counters. We have these Lord counters which look just like control markers, except they have this tiny little crown on them. Yes, I'm not thrilled with the components for this game. They're pretty. They don't do their function. So, what's hard to tell is whether or not the Lord's special ability... Yeah, no, that's not... So the Lords have some special abilities built into their counter. And this is only an optional rule, by the way, is to play with these counters on the map. These count as +1 heroes for game purposes, but with individual capabilities. But they can be captured if they're on the board. You can move your Lord at the end of the event phase to any area you control, because based on random events you may want to have him in different areas or something. They're very fast. Okay, now again, this is an optional role, but of course I'm going to play with optional rules. Okay, Lord Krausen. He's the undead guy. Wherever he is, he'll get an extra undead every replacement phase where he is. He also has a 5 out of 10 probability of escape with captured, with a +3 if the victor's going to try to kill him, because he has an easier time getting away without his head, and a -1 for each time he's been captured. Okran. It's this evil priest. The area he's in, the faith is modified by +1. It also gets the benefits of a temple if there is none. But that's only in an area that he controls. He doesn't help anyone else. He gets 2 permanent faith points each time he kills a lord, except for Krausen. Unless he's captured by a lord-led army, he lures his opponents and flees with a 9 out of 10 chance. If an enemy lord is not fighting against him. Melach. It's this fellow here. He'll get 50% more gold during the tax collecting phase in an area he controls. And he can alter a verdict, death, prison, or submission against him by paying a ransom of 50 gold. He can give the opponent 50 gold and the opponent has to accept it. Yurik up here. He's a +5 hero. And he doubles himself using his power. We'll get to powers in a moment. But he won't get... He starts the game normally with a hero. He won't get this. It's a +3 hero that... because he's a hero and it's such an important thing, they won't put that there. He also has a 9 out of 10 probability when he's captured in a Viking area of escaping. Mayreth, I think that's this elf. He musters a free elven unit if he's in an elvish area during recruitment, in addition to any elven recruitment in the area, without lowering its prosperity. The units will set up in the capital city, and he escapes with a 9 out of 10 in an elvish area. Sandra, her first power is going to be boosted in the village in which she's at. It'll be a 3-point boost, either in her favor or again in the village folks' disfavor if she's fighting against them. When she's captured, she seduces her captor with a 7 out of 10 probability. And that'll allow her to flee. But this is modified by -2 against Krossen and -3 against Orken. Okay. If your lord is involved in combat and you lose a battle, you have been captured. If you're in an independent area, you flee. However, otherwise, you have several choices. That's because you're attacking the independents and they would capture you and you wouldn't have anybody to figure out what to do with them. But if you're fighting against an opponent, you have several choices. You can free the lord, which lets him go. You can kill him. You can keep him prisoner, demand a ransom, or force him to submit. If you kill him, you remove him from the game, you take his gold, his areas are independent. You can't do this if you're good to another good player, and that's Mayreth and Sandra. They cannot do it to each other. Okay. You could demand a ransom. The opponent has to give you 50 gold, and then he gets to get away. If he doesn't have 50 gold, he gives you all the gold he has, and he must pay the rest of it over time as he gets it. You can hold him prisoner. His faith points are dropped to 0. He cannot win while he's prisoner. He keeps his units in controlled areas while he's a prisoner. He cannot attack his captor, but the captor can attack him. If the two players choose to ally each other, the prisoner will be set free. And a prisoner can escape at the start of his turn. On an 8 or more, he escapes and flees. And he gets to do this each turn in diplomacy. Prisoner sounds like a really bad choice unless you want this person as your ally. The player can submit. He owes obedience to the captor. The players can't do this if they have opposing alignment, good and chaotic. The captured lord is freed. The player keeps all his areas and units, but half his income, taxes, and trade go to his overlord. The two players are automatically allied from then on. The master can decide to break the alliance, which breaks also the submission. The submission is automatically revoked, though, if during a diplomacy phase the submitted lord controls more areas than his master, or when he has no more areas left at all, as soon as his overlord is made a prisoner or submits to another lord. If the submitted lord is captured by someone else, the new captor can't force him to submit. And then some specialties there about the freeing of prisoners under special conditions. Now, that's an optional rule. But here's the core rule. Remember, there's these powers that you have based on the amount of faith that you have under your control. Each character has some of this, and we also get a setup here that tells you how you set up if you're not playing the historical variant or whatever that is. Okay, so let's go to Orcam first. He's obviously chaotic. His first ability is Possession. He casts a spell before recruiting a unit. The recruit frequency is modified by adding the area's fate. This can only be done if there's a temple, and it can't go beyond twice the base frequency. Now this is a spell. It's going to cost magic points. Not all of them work on this. Magic points are going to be equal to your faith points, but apparently you regain them each turn. I guess. I remember seeing something. Orcam receives as many magic points as faith points. You can spend them until the next power phase, and they can't be saved from one turn to the next. So that's why I get that. Now, once he reaches level 2, he can cast his spells before this spell before attacking during combat. It applies to a unit he owns and makes it fanatic. Its combat value is doubled, and that costs 6. Cursed Waters he can cast before an enemy's recruit phase. The enemy area loses 3 prosperity points and no unit can be recruited there. Cost 9. And Death's Face costs 12. He can cast this after an enemy's recruit phase. All units in the area into which Orc can cast his spell are destroyed except Valkyrie and Undead. And that costs 12. Okay. Chryson. His level 1, and you get your level 1 for free. You always have this. When he loses a fight, I think there's an error here. I think this should say win. His lost units will rise again, turned into undead units. Because he's lost. So I think that's supposed to be wins, and in fact I'm going to pencil that in. The level 2 is Dark Force. Lord Crussen's undead have a 4 combat value. Now, undead normally are only 1s. I don't think you can see that, and I can't zoom in without blurring it. Power 3 is Summoning of Skulls. When he captures an area, Lord Crussen can summon up to 4 undead units in the area. And Ultimate Necromancy, when he loses a combat, this one is meant to be, all lost units, including undead and enemy, have a 50% chance of coming back as undead. And then there can be a second combat and a third and so on until there's only one victor. That is why the other one can't be when he loses a fight, because it would create this same kind of situation. So he doesn't really lose a battle. There's only 32 undead on the map, though. He can remove them from other locations to raise them where he is. On to Mareth. His first level power is Calling on the Forest. He casts this before a combat in which he's involved, and it has to take place in a non-chaotic area with forests. Mareth raises living forest units, 3 magic points each, but no more than the number of forest hexes adjacent to the capital city. A living forest has 5 combat and cannot move. It acts as other units up to the maintenance phase, and then they disappear during that phase. In the advanced game, he plays it when it takes place in a forest hex or in a hex adjacent to the forest hex. And he can cast this spell several times in combat, provided there is 1 forest per raised unit. Okay, so Lord Croson doesn't pay spell points. He doesn't have magic points to spend. Mareth does, and you can see again 3, 6, 9, 12. The second one is Doppelganger. He casts this during recruitment. 1 unit is duplicated. He gets another unit of the same type. And this will not cost against prosperity. The third power is Inversion. He casts this before combat. 1 or more enemy units, 9 points each, magic points, switch sides. When the combat ends, they stay on Mareth's side. That's a potent little ability, isn't it? However, some units are immune. Undead, Heroes, Valkyries, Loki, Barbarians, the Dragon, Berserk units under Uruk, and Fanatic units under Orkan. Remember, Orkan has a magic ability that allows him to make fanaticism. The fourth one is Temporal Paralysis. He casts this before movement in combat. No units in the ground or sea area designated by Mareth can move. Other units can enter this area, but they stop when they enter, even if they still have movement points. If it's controlled by a player, it loses 3 prosperity. Milok. Milok's our merchant over here. His first level, he doesn't have magic points. His first level point is double the amount that he gets from merchant guilds. His second level is he can build assets for only 7 gold instead of 10. And destroying assets, remember at any time you can destroy an asset for 5 gold, well, he gets 7 back. So he can remove his assets and get all his money back for them. Power 3 is Low Wages. Recruitment and maintenance. These are the cost changes, I guess, that he has for how much he'd normally pay. And then trading with the enemy before a combat involving his heroes or units, Milok can bribe enemy units, paying twice their normal recruiting price. These units will be removed from the game as if eliminated. He can't do this to undead heroes, Valkyrie, Loki, Barbarian, Sacred Dragon, Berserk units, and Fanatic units. Cannot use it at sea. And yes, you can fight at sea. Okay, Yurik. Yuriks are Viking. He's going to be very popular among his subjects. He has a +1 frequency for recruiting Valkyrie in Nurland and Vasily. Now, he doesn't start out with Vasily, and I'm not sure where it is. I see a Vasa, but I do not see a Vasily. So I don't know. But he starts out in Nurland up there. I think it's probably Vasa. Okay. That is not his bonus, though. He has the Art of War. His heroes have a combat bonus equal to twice their value. That includes him. He's a +5. Well, he comes out as +10. Ooh, I can see how we might get here, right? Seawolf. His Drakers have an additional movement point. Moreover, building a Dracker costs 5 gold only, and maintaining them is always free. The extra movement point turns into 10 hexes instead of 7 in the advanced game. Plunder. During collect taxes, if an area has no castle, Yurik can plunder it. The area gives 6 times the wealth and loses 8 prosperity. Now, normally plunder is actually restricted, and I forgot to tell you this. I thought you could just do it. Plunder may be a post-combat option or something. I don't know. I'll get back to that at some point. But apparently people normally can't plunder. Oh, if it has no castle. You can plunder with a castle because you're taxing. But this gives him a right to tax without a castle. That's what's bonus. But it kills a lot of prosperity points. Who cares? It doesn't have a castle. It's not going to do you any good anyway. Okay, and the 4th power is Berserk. If he wishes, in a combat in which he's the attacker, he can order any unit he commands to sacrifice itself. Its combat strength will be doubled, but it will die no matter what the outcome. The unit is not tallied in the losses. He can order everything he has to go berserk if he wishes, and thereby kill off his entire force, but he wins the combat at least. Okay, and Sandra. Oh, here he's the king's eldest daughter. Elsewhere I thought it said youngest, which was weird. The king only had daughters. So, her first power is Fame. Village folks in her areas have a +1 combat value bonus, and those that she attacks have a -1. Now remember, this changes to 3 with the option, plus and minus 3. This power only happens in the hex where she actually is. Ardor. Her village folks build 1 asset per turn per area at no cost if the area contains 2 assets or less. Don't count Drakers. This building happens at the beginning of the build-up phase. So new areas she gains can start becoming more and more valuable and, without her having to pay money for them. I like that, but, well, I like building. Honor Code, that's the 3rd one. When she conquers an enemy area, no assets are destroyed. Even castles and fortified walls remain when the battle is over. In addition, the area will lose no prosperity points. And a Royal Aura. During the recruitment phase, each area controlled by Sandra, 1 or more units of the local type appear spontaneously. They're not counted as recruited units, so no prosperity is lost. If they're minor units, you get 3 per area. Ordinary, 2, and only 1 exceptional unit per area. Okay. That is all of it. I don't have a lot more to say. I split the videos primarily because I needed to look back at the rules, and I don't think it's a burden to have it in 2 pieces for anyone. It just works out that way and gave me a nice break. All right, so we'll get started on this, see where we go.